tempting to hit the pause button on runaway growth and development in our state, but most of us don't get that choice unless you live in Lakewood, where right now voters would have until 7 p.m. tomorrow to decide whether to limit growth in that city. Boulder and Golden have had similar rules for decades, so our Marshall Zellinger went to check out how it's working.
As Lakewood voters decide if luxury apartments, growth, should be limited in the city limits, they don't have to look far to see how a similar city ordinance works in real life.
The ordinance was adopted in 1996 in Golden, our 1% growth ordinance.
In Golden, developers must apply for an allocation to build one new home, or multiple allocations to build multiple new homes, like the ones currently under construction in a few pockets of the city. But limiting luxury apartments was not why Golden put this in place 23 years ago.
At the time, it was adopted mainly for the single-family growth on the hillside.
This year, Golden has 78 allocations for new units. If a large apartment complex wants to build, like this one, they have to apply for allocations over multiple years and wait until they have enough to start construction.
We have really few opportunities to develop new land in Golden.
In Boulder,
the system itself was created in 1976, which was actually a 2% per year. It was in 1995 that we reduced that to 1% per year.
There are 571 allocations available to build new units in 2019.
As you can see as you go around town, there is still growth and redevelopment that occurs in Boulder just like every other community.
If Lakewood voters say yes to the growth limits tomorrow night, that would mean about 680 allotments could be issued for development in 2020. Projects wanting 40 or more units, like luxury apartments, they would have to wait and see if allotments get snapped up by smaller projects first. And even then, those large developments would have to go through special public meetings before getting approval. Nearly 100,000 ballots were sent out for this special election. As of noon today, 28,000 votes had been cast. Hey, that's easy math. 28% voter turnout so far. This ultimately comes down to one thing. Do you want to limit your city in growth, or do you trust the people you've voted in place, city council, planning commissions, to do that for you? In Golden, where these limits have been in place for more than 2 decades, there's a planning commission that will still say no to projects, even though they might fit in with, hey, we've got an allocation available, but they may not feel like it fits in. So ultimately, it comes down to your trust factor with your city.
Don't you think, though, that people in cities across Colorado don't have an understanding of who actually makes these decisions in their community? So growth and development, huge issue in the Denver mayor's race. And if you talk to the mayor of Denver, he's like, oh, that's city council and some departments that make all those calls. I don't have anything to do with growth.
It actually goes one level down. So city council makes the ultimate approval, but there are planning commission, which are made up of city council men, women, and in some cases just members of the community that make decisions that say, hey, this fits in with what's in ordinance. We like the idea of what you want. We think you should get the permit.
Yeah.
And then it goes up to city council, and then the mayor just kind of, the city council does what the mayor wants in some cities.
Sure. Good to know who's making the decisions in your own local community. All right, well, watch Lakewood. Thank you, Marshall. The failed attempt to recall Democratic State Rep Tom Sullivan did not raise $1. And it did not spend $1. We learned that from some financial filings. Now, that sounds funny unless you heard us saying weeks ago that this recall was really about a gun rights group called Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. The head of the Rocky Mountain Gun Owners says they funded the entire recall. And guess what? They don't have to disclose their donors. So we are left to take that special interest group at its word that this was not just a fundraiser designed as a recall that was never going to succeed. We are left to take them at their word that they took in $30,000 and spent more than that, $45,000, on a failed signature gathering effort. If those happen to be your dollars and your trust, my condolences. Maybe you heard that the people challenging Colorado's new national popular vote law are pretty close to forcing that issue onto the ballot for all of us to decide. That claim is actually misleading. Opponents vowed to gather these petition signatures for a challenge just as soon as Democratic Governor Jared Polis put his signature on the law, the one that adds Colorado to a group of states promising to award electoral votes to the national popular vote winner. Now, this will only take effect if enough states join, and that's a ways off. But Republican opponents want to get Colorado off of this list right now. The new claim is that they have more than 110,000 of the 124,000 signatures they need to put this on the ballot. That is technically true, but they really need a lot more signatures than that to account for all the signatures that will inevitably be thrown out for this reason or that. By their own admission, their actual goal is 200,000. That means that they're a bit more than halfway there with signatures due August 1st. The Dougco School Board is not going to put STEM School Highlands Ranch on a path to closure after the school shooting there, but it is pretty clear that that school community and the school board more than dislike each other. A last-minute weekend meeting led to a 5-year charter extension for the STEM school just before that charter was supposed to end. The school board originally tried to extend the charter for just 1 year. They had a whole list of concerns, some of them related to school security. The shooting in May killed one student and injured several others. STEM parents, though, said that the school board was just using the shooting as cover to punish a charter school they didn't like. So if you're thinking that this weekend's meeting resolves that dispute for the next 5 years, think again. Listen to the language used by a board member as she accuses the school's leader of bullying. That is pretty strong language considering how bullying is such a buzzword around school shootings.
I want to make it very clear I'm voting to approve this contract, not submitting to the bullying tactics used by the STEM director and the continued pain and negativity that caused the families impacted by the misinformation shared via an email. It is our sworn duty to hold any school accountable to the health, best education practices, and safety of its students, and I believe this contract does that.
The 5-year charter does allow the school board to get in there and reassess whether STEM Highlands Ranch is meeting the school board's goals. It should be apparent by now that leaders in Douglas County love to fight with each other in public. You've got the school board versus the county commissioners recently, the county commissioners versus the sheriff. Now it's the sheriff's office versus the clerk and recorder. The sheriff's office is ticked that the clerk accused him of operating a speed trap to generate money. Clerk Merlin Klotz posted a speed trap warning on Facebook, told drivers that there are deputies waiting for him at a confusing set of speed limit signs on the Hess exit off I-25. Clerk Klotz even called for the tickets written at that spot to be taken off of drivers' records. The sheriff's office responded to their county clerk's accusation with a 725-word rebuttal to what it called grievous misinformation. They denied doing it for the revenue. They talked about the curvature, downgrade slope, and the approach to the intersection, and they even cited the manual on uniform traffic control devices. So what have we learned by Douglas County's latest public spat? Don't speed as you exit I-25 onto Hess Road, and don't get caught standing between two government leaders in Douglas County. Our next question, as we get closer to the 4th of July, comes from a next viewer named Lana. Lana asks, if it's illegal to discharge fireworks in Jefferson County, why is it still legal to sell fireworks in Jefferson County? So Lana, the answer here is in the details, because only legal fireworks can be sold in Jeffco. People selling fireworks there have to apply for a permit. Sheriff's office will go out, take a look around at the stand, make sure that everything there is street legal. They'll go back if there's a complaint about illegal fireworks being sold. Cities and towns within the county have some more leeway to relax rules on fireworks, but they all have to follow the state law, the one that bans any fireworks that leave the ground. May I make a recommendation? Point you towards somebody's work that I think is really worth your time. This one comes from Next Digital Director Aaron, who caught a HuffPost article that shares a doctor's perspective on Colorado's medical aid in dying law, the physician-assisted suicide law passed by voters in 2016. The guest writer is an oncologist who talks about the first 2 patients who came to him asking for the prescription, talking about the process of getting that prescription for them and the impact that it had on him and the people he was trying to serve. You can find a link to that article on the Next Facebook page.
I knew right then that that's not going to fly. That's not going to work for our parkway.
You've heard of NIMBY. This is NIMFY, not in my front yard.
The historic guidelines are very, very thorough.
And do you recognize the face in the new mural along the Cherry Creek Bike Trail?
The one word I would use to describe Major Taylor is trailblazer.
Do you even recognize the name? We should. That's next. Denver does not have a shortage of controversial issues these days, but man, you mentioned bike lanes. People get hot about those. I mean, like where to put them, whether you should protect them, how they impact drivers, people parking, cyclists, people walking. We've seen some neighbors go to great lengths to block bike lanes. On Marion Street, they're fighting some bike lane upgrades by going old school. They're citing history. Allie Levine has the story.
As Denver's streets get more and more crowded, and people like Patsy Brown become outnumbered,
I'm a native Denverite.
the city and how commuters get around it is changing.
Yeah, Denver is experiencing a bike renaissance.
But not everyone is interested in being part of the revival.
The attitude is we want to protect and preserve our parkway.
Brown lives along South Marion Street Parkway.
I've been here about 5 years.
It's one of 21 historically designated parkways in the city of Denver.
But this one is gorgeous.
The 4-block stretch is also identified as one of 8 areas getting a protected bike lane.
That's not going to fly. That's not going to work for our parkway.
Bicycle Colorado says it will work, not only for the parkway, but for the city's bike lane network as a whole.
So it's the key north-south connector in that area.
They call it high density, yes and no.
Denver Public Works says the parkway has seen 37 crashes over the last 5 years, 6 with bicyclists, 2 with pedestrians.
So it's identified for protected bike lane because the city wants to increase biking for everyday trips.
But Brown and her neighbors are concerned for the parkway's historic designation.
The historic guidelines are very, very thorough, detailed.
If you really want to talk historic and we go back to the beginning of the nature of the parkway, the first thing that we really should be looking at is whether or not we have cars on that street.
Brown doesn't think it's a question of either or.
Our goal is just to let the bikers coexist with us the way they are. It's working really, really well.
Denver Public Works says the parkway's historic designation does not protect it from safety or operations changes. It's working with Parks and Rec to make sure the protected bike lane is within the parkway's rules and regulations. And Public Works expects to present those concepts to the community this fall. Kyle.
Horse and buggies only on the parkways is what I say. So like any group of outraged citizens, they have taken a petition to the city, which, the city is holding on too tightly.
Yeah, that's right. So Patsy says she dropped off the petition 2 weeks ago with about 180 signatures or so of other Parkway residents. The mayor's office says it doesn't have it, and Public Works also says they don't have it either.
Oh. Okay, all right, well, very good. Small hitch in that giddy up. That is another horse and buggy reference. All right, thank you, Allie.
A new month, a new weather pattern. Last week, sunny, hot, dry, temperatures near 100 degrees. This week, rain and cooler weather. Thunderstorms make a comeback with seasonal highs in the mid-80s, and that's a trend that'll continue for most of this week. Storms are rolling east off the foothills, producing brief, heavy downpours, little street flooding, a little bit of lightning, and even some small hail. Severe weather threat mainly east of Fort Morgan and out toward the Burlington and Lamar areas. A lot of lightning. All this moisture coming up around the backside of high pressure, which is anchored to the east of us. And with this plume of moisture continuing to stream northward into Colorado, we will see another round of thunderstorms tomorrow. After a break tonight, a mostly sunny start to the day tomorrow, and then we may see some of those storms reach severe limits and producing some hail east of the metro area on Tuesday. Tonight, still the chance for showers and thunder early, then clearing, our low near 60. Tomorrow with sunshine, a high of 86, but a late day shower or storm not out of the question. Warmer and drier weather as we move through the middle part of the week, with only isolated storms expected for the 4th of July. And speaking of the 4th of July, during the day, warm and dry for outdoor plans and the barbecue, and maybe during the evening, a little surprise from Mother Nature in the form of thunder and lightning. Hey, if you have a storm report, send that in to us. Don't forget to download the new and improved 9 News weather app, the interactive radar. Really handy on a day like today, Kyle.
Thank you, Kathy. So all last week on vacation, I mainly wanted to come back so that I could update our thrilling countdown graphic, marking the number of days until RTD finally opens its promised train line to Longmont. So there you go. That's soothing. 11,143 days remaining. The year 2050 is going to be here before we know it, so everybody eat your vegetables. Thank you to Jeremy Hohol and Anusha Roy for keeping the countdown updated while I was gone. So speaking of, we took our daughter on her first family vacation. It was wonderful. She, though, is 16 months old, so she won't remember any of it.
She won't remember her first time at the beach. How she loved the tidal pools and the hermit crabs, the splashing and the stomping and seeing an enormous seagull and saying, "Airplane!" But that's what photos are for. To remind her that if one day she comes to love beach sunsets, that all started with her uncle. And that if she grows up to be a baseball fan, it was Grandpa who took her to her first game. We will look at the photos someday and say, she looks so young. And she'll look at the photo someday and say, you guys look so young. So let's all get out and make a memory this summer, wherever we are, while we're still young. A sports pioneer most of us have never heard of, being honored with art.
Well before Jackie Robinson, well before Martin Luther King, this guy was going above and beyond and just succeeding so well in his sport despite everything that stood in his way.
And it's a sign of the hidden humor that makes everybody's day a little easier. That's next.
Riding the Cherry Creek bike path, you're going to pass Major Taylor. Not many cyclists passed him when he was in his prime. He was the first African American to win a world cycling championship. That was 1899. Our Byron Reed shows us how Major Taylor made history and why all these years later, he's been made into a mural.
To describe what kind of man Major Taylor was,
He was a man of great character.
for some, one word comes to mind.
The one word I would use to describe Major Taylor is trailblazer.
Taylor was an African-American cyclist in the late 1800s and was the first person of color to be crowned cycling world champion in 1899.
The fact that he's an unsung hero, most of us grew up all our lives without hearing about him.
Darrell West is the president of the Major Taylor Cycling Club of Denver and wants to get the word out about who Taylor was.
And for him to be a cyclist of color and achieve what he did through racism, all of the taunting, the assaults that he had to endure, is just a testament to the man that he was.
West is getting help from an artist who grew up in Denver.
I'm a lifelong cyclist and longtime fan of Major Taylor.
And was recently asked by the city to paint a mural of Taylor.
I did this over 3 days.
On the Cherry Creek Trail pathway.
The response has been great, and people walking by on the bridge, and, so many people stopping and saying, who is he? And then they want to know the history.
So trail lovers in Denver can learn a little history about a man who blazed a trail for cyclists like West.
And he did what he could to live a good life, be a good person, and always be a man of character. And that was something that we knew that our kids here in Colorado and Denver should have a hero like that to look up to.
For Next, I'm Byron Reed.
You'll find Major Taylor on the bike path between Spear and 15th. We believe the world would be a better place if we would each hide a little humor here and there for other people to find. A next viewer found some. That and your feedback next. It's a sign that somebody at King Soopers has a sense of humor. Mikkel Davis spotted a sign at King Soopers in Parker over the weekend. Horseradish root, not made from horses. They would not put the sign there unless somebody had asked, right? But here's to hiding humor here and there. You never know who's going to need it and when, right? If you see a sign that makes you do a double take, share it with the rest of our state. Email next@9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext. Jen Anderson writes in and says, Kyle, you seem overly snarky tonight, but that's okay. You've been on vacation. I love it. Jeremy Reynolds did not. He says he uses the Marion Parkway bike lane daily. Jeremy says it works just fine and does not require a sarcastic comment about horses and buggies. Batting 500 first day back. That's not terrible. See you next time.